Hey everybody, tonight we're debating whether or not there is a demonic, and we are starting right now with Justus's opening statement as he is taking the affirmative that there are demons. Thanks so much for being with us, Justus. The floor is all yours.
Uh, Greetings, everyone. Again, thank you, James. Thank you, Mark, for being here. Glad to talk about this. The motivation for me to join this debate was a debate that I listened to several weeks ago, maybe a month ago, on a similar topic about ghosts, and I felt that the position of the supernatural and the spiritual, albeit the evil and malevolent supernatural and spiritual, wasn't properly represented, and I wanted to kind of give a chance for my side of the debate to get a better viewing. If we look into the history of mankind, we see that throughout all peoples, all nations, and all religions, there is a commonality of belief structures. There are three things that almost all religions, all nations, all ethnos have in common. First of all is the belief in the divine. Not all peoples believe in a monotheistic religion, or some are polytheistic, some are monotheistic. However, the belief in the divine, in some kind of a structured hierarchy of deities, is a common belief among all peoples everywhere. The second thing that's commonly held among all peoples everywhere up until just the most recent modern age, is the belief in the malevolent divine, or we can call it the demonic. So jinns, demons, ghosts, spirits, hauntings, these things are as common in the literature and the belief systems and structures of people throughout the world as the belief in the divine. The third thing that is also common among all peoples is the belief in the fallen state of man, that mankind is in some kind of predicament due to some kind of first sin or some kind of falling away from the divine, and that in this state, humans are beset by the demonic. I put this into my intro. I just wanted to put this out there as the first evidence for the demonic. The people who are on the skeptic side of both the debate on the divine, on gods in general, or on the demonic, as we're debating tonight, will often say, "Well, that's not evidence. That's an argument from history." And I will have to admit that technically it is an argument from antiquity. It is an argument from history. However, if you find that something is so absolutely universal throughout history, it needs to be addressed more specifically than just hand waving it away as a logical fallacy. This is something that is universal, even among nations and ethnic groups that do not have a specific religious belief in or specific position on the higher level gods, like Shintoism. You still have a belief in the demonic. So in some ways, the demonic is a larger set of people have held those beliefs throughout history and even into today than even believe in God. So that is my first bit of evidence, is the universality of the beliefs throughout history and throughout most of the world today in the human population. Again, truth is not a democracy, but still it's something that has to be dealt with. The second thing that I'd like to say is when we're talking about evidence of the demonic or evidence of the spiritual realm in general, we have to pay attention to the terminology. We are talking about the supernatural. And people like my honored opponent will ask us for physical evidence of the supernatural. The word supernatural literally means above the physical or outside of the natural order. And so they say, we want evidence of this thing that is specifically denoted as not having a physical nature, and give us evidence, like show us films or show us, I don't know, readings on radiation or magnetic readings or whatever. And it's like, no, the very terminology is that it's supernatural. What is the thing that can interact with the supernatural? In my belief system, in this belief system that I operate out of, which is a Christian worldview, human beings are the device which interact with the supernatural. We have a body, a soul, and a spirit, and we are engineered by our creator to have that interaction with the supernatural. And so when you have a universal belief among these devices, quote unquote, humans who interact with the supernatural, that there is a supernatural, to me that says this is, again, it's kind of a reiteration of the first evidential point, but it is important. So the third thing, what is the evidence that I'm going to be presenting tonight? I'm hopefully going to be able to do that a little bit more in the Q&A session, is my own experience. So if I'm right away saying, I'm not so much interested in films and pictures and all that. However, I'm not saying that they don't exist. Sure, they might, but my evidence that I have is based on my own experience. As a missionary of 20 years who's worked in underprivileged areas where the belief in the demonic, the belief in the supernatural is rampant among people who aren't even, believers in the higher order deities. I've had a practice of delivering people, helping people get rid of demonic influences in their lives, specifically hauntings in their houses. I specialize in cleaning haunted houses from people. And I also am a pastor of the local church. I have 3 small churches that I pastor. And people outside of my church who don't even go to our Sunday services or not part of our community will come to me on a regular basis and ask me to clean their house because their relatives or their ancestors, the people, their grandfather or grandmother, have been involved in black magic often, or they've been involved in behaviors that predispose them towards possession or towards haunting, and they ask for help in getting rid of these entities. And when you go into a room or into a house where people have been suffering, plagued by demonic influences for years, and you do what needs to be done to get rid of those influences, and then people come back and thank you, and they're relieved because the influences have left. Even in situations where, for instance, the children are of the household are reporting that they're seeing entities, that they're feeling fears, that they're hearing sounds, that doors are opening and closing, that dishes are being broken, so forth and so on. And then you do the cleaning procedure, you exorcise, use the word strangely, get rid of the demon, get rid of the haunting out of the house without the children around. I always do this when the children are out playing. I'm not interested in trying to psych them out or anything. They've already been through enough. And you just go with the parents and you do the exorcism, you do the cleaning, and then the parents will say it stopped. The children are not having night horrors anymore. They're completely free from this. For me, this is the kind of evidence that says, yes, this is actually something that is, and it's more than psychosomatic, because we're not even giving the children a placebo. They are the ones who are reporting the influences, and they're the ones who are being freed from it without even knowing that something was done. So I don't know how many minutes I have left there, James. So a lot of people will ask me, if demons exist or if there is a demonic world, why don't they interact like just every day? Why don't we see them all the time? And the reason for that is that there are different levels of demonic powers. The scripture tells us that there are demonic powers that reign in the air, that are over nations, over cities, over countries, and they work through lies. They work through trying to get people to believe in their power. So we can call this ideological possession, or the power of the air, which is the way the Bible talks about it. And this is something that I think is real. But the fundamental point here is that Satan, along with his cohorts of demonic legions, work through lies. He is the father of lies, and he works through lies. Scripture also tells us that we are submitted to him whom we submit ourselves to. We're enslaved to him who we enslave ourselves to. And so demonic powers take control over people, possessing homes, possessing bodies, through this process of self-enslavement. People have to give themselves over to demonic powers to be able to be subjected by them. And the whole point of hauntings, the whole point of binding people into fear is to get them to give more power to the demonic powers than they had previously. One of the reasons that I want to come on here is to tell people, or to let people know that the demonic powers are real, but there is a way out. And the way out is to find the Lord and to seek his power, because his power is so much greater than the demonic power. I have seen that in my life and in my work, which we can get into a little bit more in the Q&A session. But if you are in a situation where you find yourself bound by something that feels greater than you, that you have come under its power, and if you are the kind of person who has experienced a demonic oppression, you know what I'm talking about. Know that there is a way out, and that way out is the person of Jesus Christ, who gives us the power to overcome all demonic oppression. So with that, I'll end my opening statement, and we will kick it over to James. Back to James.
You got it. Thank you very much for that opening indeed. And want to let you know, folks, if it's your first time here at Modern Day Debate, we are a neutral channel hosting debates on science, religion, and politics. We hope you feel welcome no matter what walk of life you are from. If you haven't yet, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, as we have many more juicy debates coming up. For example, at the bottom right of your screen, Alex Stein and Hunter Avallone collide later this month. You don't want to miss it, so do hit that subscribe button. And with that, we're going to kick it over to Mark Reid. Thanks so much for being with us. Mark, the floor is all yours.
Thank you so much, James. And I'll just share my screen here, mate. So just let me know when I'm ready to go. My name's Mark Reid, and I'm debating the negative of evidence for the demonic. I want to thank Modern Day Debate and the James, the moderator, as well as my interlocutor, Justus. And of course, I want to thank the audience for spending their time to join us here to debate this topic. Now, I'll be arguing that the belief in the demonic, it's not just, and what I believe is that religion is making a fear to sell you the cure to this fear that they're making, but it's also highly dangerous. And I will be going through why that is so in my presentation here. So I'll just first go through the burden of proof. It's squarely on the shoulders claiming there is evidence for the demonic. Needless to say, not one shred of credible evidence has been put forward to confirm any kind of demonic spirit or malevolent being that we can examine today. What we do get is anecdotes, people screaming, no supernatural events, and stories that have been passed along for little regard to how it's gathered or the methodology in which it's gathered. A methodology is a study of how the evidence and fact about a subject has been gathered and how reliable that method is if it's replicated by somebody else. So we will be examining Justus's methodology today and find out exactly how reliable that is. Now, the origins of demons go back to the Paleolithic era and is encompassed by anything that was strange or horrific. It stems from the Greek word daemon, denoting spirit or divine power, appearing in Plato, describing the divine inspiration of Socrates as a daemon concept. Judeo-Christian tradition, the Greek daemon was replaced by demons and associated with evil things, although this concept was actually taken from Egyptian and Mesopotamian mythology. Some Eastern religions, like Hinduism, did have a concept of evil spirits called Ashura and Rakshasa, who were formerly gods and conflated with Western demons, although they were human-like and were a vastly different concept from our concept. Interestingly, there are religions like Buddhism that has no concept of demons, although the followers did have some superstitions about spirits. Now, these are a few of the things that have been blamed on throughout history to demons in the past. Firstly, the idea of demons cause illness or disease is demonstrably false. It's no wonder that somebody in the ancient time, not knowing about germs or bacteria, blamed invisible demons for their illnesses and troubles. However, we now know that health has nothing to do with spirits or gremlins, and that wounds that infect or disease transmitted isn't the work of any spirit. Many people believe in demons when suffering from sleep paralysis, but we now know this is a form of nightmare that leaves the sufferer awake. And we're beginning to understand why it occurs and how to address it. I just want to point out that people did believe that nocturnal emission or ejaculation in the sleep were actually succubus that used to sort of seduce men in their sleep kind of thing. And this is the kind of thinking that we're getting into here. Now, so one of the things I want to touch on, this is really important. It's the tendency for mental illness to be blamed on demons and evil spirits in Christianity and other religions. I'm not picking on them specifically. This leads to a serious underreporting in mental illnesses, and those illnesses are ascribed to supernatural events rather than the psychological trauma they should be. Christians suffering from mental health issues can feel stigmatized and have a tendency to blame their mental health issues on demons or a lack of spiritual fortitude. The idea that one can be beset by demons is not helpful for addressing these effects of trauma and can be very detrimental to the person that holds these beliefs. And a worst case scenario can cause deadly harm to loved ones and the community. And I'll be showing some examples of that. This has actually been documented. The flip side to believing good things can be comforting, and that's been documented. Believing in heaven can be comforting. It can produce good feelings, is that evil things in a religion can be terrifying and distressing for the believer. Although there is no reason to believe in demons, this belief is the single highest negative predictor for mental health in young adults, the single highest. So not only does the promoting of demons, spirits, ghosts, and goblins hinder people from scientifically based mental health treatment, it can actually contribute to mental health problems. This kind of unnecessary fear that religion instills into people is one of the most irresponsible actions that religion has ever done. It is pervasive and insidious with absolutely no reason to propagate as we understand mental health, why it occurs, and it doesn't involve any supernatural entities of any sort. Just as an aside, I do want to implore anybody that's having mental health issues or loved ones with mental health issues, whether you be Christian, Muslim, Hindi, or atheist, see medical professionals and mental health experts rather than blaming supernatural and otherworldly entities. And I do really believe that. So I'll go through a series of explanations that people have given for demon possession. This is the usual suspect, schizophrenia. It's a chronic brain disorder, affects less than 1% of the US population. When it's active, these symptoms can be delusions, hallucinations. Basically, the hallucinations experienced are usually significant to the sufferer and are based upon environmental stimuli. That thus a person that believes in demons will often have this as a feature of their hallucinations. And as you notice, it does have internal audible voices, like people are talking to them or commanding them to do things. This is a very, very common symptom of this mental health issue. Dissociative disorders. Now, this was referred to as multiple personality in the past. It has been updated as we understand a lot more of it. Some of these identities can be rude, aggressive, rarely violent. However, the prevalence of violence is the same as the general population, so it is possible. It doesn't necessitate people with this disorder will be aggressive. However, the change of personality can be disturbing to people that don't understand this disorder. And it's really important to understand what is happening with these people rather than blaming a supernatural entity. Demons and evil spirits have also been blamed for epilepsy. I'm going to go to the Bible where in Mark 9:20, I apologize. And they brought unto him, and when he saw him, straightway the spirit tar him, and he fell on the ground and wallowed foaming, is a quite decent description of an epileptic fit. The treatment in this passage is also suggested in Mark 9:29, and he said unto him, this kind can come forth by nothing but by prayer and fasting. This can lead to catastrophic circumstances when a person is suffering from an illness and prohibited nutrition. I'll examine some cases in the next section to show you and to give a warning. This content can be disturbing. These are real cases with real people, and some of it is distressing, and the details include some people that have died due to these superstitions. This is Michelle, a German woman. She underwent 67 Catholic exorcism rites in the year before her death. She was diagnosed with epileptic psychosis. She had a history of psychiatric treatment that proved ineffective. Her family was convinced she was possessed by a demon, and she was highly religious. She attended mass twice a week. At university, her classmates described her as withdrawn and very religious. On July 1st, 1976, she died in her home. The cause of death was malnutrition and dehydration, resulting from almost a year in a state of near starvation while these rites were performed on her. She had broken knees from doing genuflections or kneeling and praying. doctors testified that Michelle was not possessed, stating that the manifestations of demonic possession were a psychological effect of her strict religious upbringing, as well as her epilepsy. While the bishop that approved this exorcism said he wasn't aware of their health condition when he approved it and declined to testify in court. The priests performing this exorcism were convicted of negligent homicide. This is my second case, the 200 Demons House. The Gary police, where this was done, observed multiple religious shrines and Bibles throughout the home. Latoya Amons, the mother, has a high level of superstition, and psychologists concluded the children were acting deceptively and in accordance with their mother's beliefs. For example, a psychologist that evaluated the youngest son reported he had a tendency to act possessed whenever he was challenged or redirected, or when he was asked questions that he didn't wish to answer. She went on to observe the boy seemed both coherent and logical, except when they were talking about demons. Then his stories became bizarre, fragmented, and logical, and saying they changed stories every time they related them. As a consequence, children's services removed the children from the home. They said that the mother needed to employ alternate forms of discipline not related to religion or demonic possession. Meanwhile, no fewer than 4 exorcisms were performed on her by a priest, although not on the children that were the ones possessed, strangely enough. It was concluded by the DSS and psychologists that these supernatural phenomena that was observed were performed by the children themselves. The psychologists conclude the mother encouraged this behavior and there was no demons. It's interesting to note that nobody ever had problems with the house before or after. And as soon as she got her kids back, the problems mysteriously cleared up. This is the one that really gets me and why I am here at this debate. Ali, her family members performed a ceremony to liberate her of evil spirits. Police said that the girl's uncle and mother, Claudia Hernandez, they were charged with child abuse leading to her death. Now, the church pastor, Rene Huerzo, that was the grandfather of this 3-year-old, and he told the police that the daughter was possessed because she would wake up and scream or cry periodically. Now, keep that in mind. That's all they had to say that she was possessed. They brought her to the church. They were joined by the grandfather to perform an exorcism. The mother strangled the child multiple times to the point at where Ali was unconscious. She stuck her hands down her throat and continued this course of conduct for almost a full day. I think that the most awful travesty of this horrible case is that Huerzo, the pastor and grandfather of the girl, says he feels a lot of pain at the death of his grandchild, but he does not believe the exorcism caused her death. He still blames the demons. This is indicative of the delusion some of these people who believe in this superstition peddle. They killed this 3-year-old girl, and to this day, they think they did the right thing, because they think demons are real. And this was the case that really made me take this debate. And they were very disturbing. They were clear cases of religious believers mistaking mental health problems or just normal behavior as demonic influence or evil happenings. The last one was tragic. It was horrible. And it happened last year. 2021, a 3-year-old died. It is 2022, and it is time to drop these superstitions, beliefs, and move into a society that treats these social problems with solutions that work on science and understanding of the human mind, not based on magic and quackery. I don't generally speak ill of people's beliefs for no reason, but these beliefs are dangerous. If you want a better world, you'll find it with science and learning and understanding, not myth and magic. And I really implore you again, if you are suffering from dark thoughts and problems, see a professional. Thank you.
You got it. Thank you very much for that opening as well, Mark. And we are going to jump into open dialogue, folks. So want to say we really do appreciate having you here, no matter what walk of life you are from. Thrilled to have you with us. And want to let you know as well, we're going to do a somewhat short debate tonight. In particular, I'd say about average, but just slightly shorter than average. So if you happen to have any questions, be sure to get them in quickly, as we're going to wrap up probably within about an hour. So thank you very much, gentlemen. The floor is all yours.
Thank you, James. I finished. Do you want to go first, Justus?
Thanks, James. I wanted Yeah, that'd be great. Sorry with the leg. I wanted to jump in here real quick and address 2 points. Actually, address a point and also uh, ask Mark a question. The point that I wanted to address is that the scripture from the Christian worldview again delineates between epilepsy and demon possession in at least two different situations. One of them is in Matthew 4, where the list of symptoms that is given that Jesus heals from includes both epilepsy and separately demon possession. The Christian tradition, even back as far as the early first century, recognized the physiological nature of epilepsy as as desperate or different from demon possession. So the fact that you have people who conflate those things and have done harm by conflating those things is not evidence against demons or against their existence. It's evidence of people practicing bad demonology. And that's the same thing that I could say if I went through a litany of problems with modern medicine. Like, here, look at this botched surgery. Here, look at this misapplied medicine. That's not evidence of the fact that medicine doesn't work. Of course, medicine works. It's great. We should all have some medicine every once in a while. You know, the scripture admonishes us to do that. The second thing that I'd like to ask is, again, like the first thing, do you believe that hypochondria is a thing? I'm sure you will say yes. That, like, obviously people who believe they're sick get sick. And so the fact that some people who have an over obsessive attitude or relationship with the demonic might have depression or be more predisposed towards even just simple psychological problems outside of the demonic is also not surprising. And it's definitely not evidence against. Mark brought up a whole bunch of tragedies and abuses that are involved in this arena, and I would mostly agree with him. Yes, but that doesn't mean that the demonic does not exist. Abuses of a practice
Okay,
or of a
another minute or
legitimate
so.
science does not negate that science. Take for instance the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. It's a terrible misuse of atomic theory. It does not disprove atomic theory.
Right. So, yeah, and okay. So, but there's a scripture. The way you say that, differentiates between epilepsy and demonic possession, but the problem is that it doesn't provide any other reasonable conclusions either. Does it differentiate between demonic possession and schizophrenia? Does it differentiate between demonic possession and dissociative identity disorder? The whole idea that, well, if it's not epilepsy, it's got to be demonic possession is a terrible methodology for finding out what something actually is. And you sort of said, well, hypochondria is a thing. Absolutely, it's a thing. Absolutely. But the problem here is that you're saying, well, it does not mean there are not demons. It does not mean that there are either. That's the problem. I do want to touch on a few things. So you're sort of using, well, demons don't sort of have any sort of evidence in the physical world, but you're sort of suggesting that demons can have an impact on people in the physical world. We should be able to track down the causes of that. And when our scientists track down the cause, we come back with mental health, not demons and ghosts and gremlins. I'm really sorry, but you're sort of saying your belief system, humans have a body, soul, and spirit. I agree with the body part. I don't see the soul and spirit, and we've never been able to track down a soul or spirit. So what happens is you have these events. It's almost like demons of the gaps. When you haven't you don't know what a ailment is, you can say demons, and that's a terrible way to evaluate what is actually causing a problem.
First of all, nobody who is well versed in the practice or has actual experience with dealing with the demonic will say that if I see X phenomena, I jump right to demons. And again, you're bringing up horrific examples of abuses, people who are abusing the belief structure and doing terrible things. And I will fully agree with you. It's like if I were to go through a litany of doctors who should be disbarred for or whatever the word is in English, delicensed for practicing quack medicinry. Yes, of course, sure. So when you are dealing with a possession, you go through the known things that could possibly be causing the thing. You don't jump to demons. Nobody who is a serious practitioner, who is someone who's not how to say, who's not a quack, is going to jump right away to demons. And as we understand more and more about the physical world, sure, just like any set of explanations, we could say Newtonian physics of the gaps until you get to Einsteinian physics, because any previous explanation will always encompass more things than the next explanation, because the next explanation, by definition, has a higher resolution. So yes, did people before science ascribe more things to demons and gods than should have been ascribed? Sure. But does that mean that it is absolutely something that doesn't exist? Absolutely not. And again, the reasons for this is you have legitimate situations where nothing else can explain or does explain the phenomena. And so then you go back to, and especially if you're saying, I believe that this is a demonic situation, it has all the markers of a demonic situation, you apply what's necessary to be applied in that situation, and the situation is resolved. That to me is a methodology of saying, look, there are certain things that definitely have these influences. Have I gone to situations where I've said, you know what, the problem is not demons. The problem is you're watching horror movies at night and your kids are scared. Like, sure. Have I had situations where I said you need to be looking for methane leaks, or you need to be looking for high O2, too much higher levels of O2 that shouldn't be around? That's absolutely happened. So you look for those things, exclude those things, and when those things have been excluded, when you've gone down the list, what's left over is often the demonic. And then if you apply again the necessary solution and you get a result, isn't science, the scientific method, isn't it have to do with predictive power? Like if you can do something that predicts a particular result, it seems to me that is evidence in and of itself. And again, the demonic is the spiritual. So do I expect demons to come out and leave footprints? No, of course not. They're interacting with the spiritual part of man. You say there's no evidence for the soul, for the spirit. That's true, because they would be supernatural. Like you would see them phenomenologically, not empirically.
Well, that's a problem, because science does rule out things like spectral evidence. It does rule out the supernatural up front because it is so problematic. The problem is that you've already acknowledged that hypochondria is a thing, and so are psychosomatic symptoms, that people who believe in demons may exhibit the symptoms of being possessed. In fact, in the DSM-5, there is a condition called possession syndrome, where they believe that they are possessed when they are in fact not so. And I do want to point out that you do not have any credentials in mental health or neuroscience to eliminate these problems. You are simply going on what you know, and that's all that you are doing. What we try to stray away from in science is basically making or getting just a layperson to look at these things and say, yep, I know what's going on here, because you have not had the training to deal with these people who are suffering from these issues. You have not. There has been many times in the past where people have been absolutely sure of demons, and later on psychologists have said, yes, no, I recognize that condition. We're aware of that condition now. And there is no reason to think that these conditions that these people are suffering from is not possession syndrome, or just another mental health condition of which you are not aware. These people believe that these demons can possess them. And when times get tough, and I showed you where studies from psychology have analyzed Christians and said, hey, yeah, they believe that these problems are caused by demons because that's what they know. And so you're selling them a cure for a disease that does not exist.
The point about hypochondria is that you can have diseases that don't exist, and that's true. And will fully admit that. That's why any person who is dealing with the demonic, and do not I do not do exorcisms of people in general, largely because that's not my profile. I do haunting cleanings. That's mostly what I've done in my career. So the title of exorcist is a little strange. Like I'm not so much. I haven't gotten up there yet. But the what people who do practice and do help in that area in modern times will say, absolutely, we suggest that people go and get evaluated by a psychologist. Again, you're bringing up abuse cases that show abuse, and we say, the first thing that a person should do is have confession. If the confession doesn't help them by getting their conscience clean of anything that's in the past and so forth and so on, then yeah, you go to a psychologist. Absolutely. You say you're not a trained psychologist. Yep, you got me on that one. I'm not a trained psychologist. So that's why we eliminate those things. That's why we say, yeah, go to a trained psychologist. Go find help in the world of science first. There's what we call the Rees Howells principle. Rees Howells was a well-known prayer and intercessor, a prophet in the early 20th century. He predicted the World War II before it happened, many years before it happened, in specifics like the invasion of Russia and so forth and so on. It's very interesting book. And he had a principle of he wouldn't even pray for anyone's healing until they had exhausted all potential medical and scientific routes. And actually gets a lot of in the prayer and healing communities, kind of catches a lot of flack for that, for like, it's not biblical, you should go to God first. And I kind of agree with Rees. I say, you know what? We've been given a command by scripture to dominate nature first and foremost. That's the first command that we've been given, to reproduce, and then also to dominate nature. And that's part of it, finding out about our own nature, about our psychology, about the world around us. And so, yeah, have germs been ascribed to demons in the past? Sure. Have different psychological disorders been ascribed to demons in the past? Yes. Have those attributions had tragic consequences? Yes. And that's terrible. That's unfortunate. And those abuses should be corrected. But again, that does not mean that when you have a legitimate demonic situation, like a haunting, that is legitimate, and you go and you do what needs to be done to relieve these people of their suffering, and they are relieved, that is, I think, a net positive.
Right. Well, I mean, so testable predictions are what we use in science to rule it out, and the whole basis is falsifiability. So you use things like controls and things like that. No studies have brought up anything demonic or like, if you can point me in the way of a controlled experiment that points out the demonic, or even secondhand knowledge about the demonic, because you basically said that there is no, they don't have an impact on the physical world, but they kind of do, because there is an indirect impact on things. If they didn't have an impact on the physical world, they wouldn't be able to do anything. Now, I applaud you for sending them to psychologists and things first, but that doesn't mean that your next step is to just call it a demon and exorcise it, or even suggest that is the case. I wonder, and perhaps you could answer this in a second, I wonder how many people who are atheists or skeptics or people that don't believe in demons come to you and say, hey, we've got a supernatural event we need you to clear up. I would bet none. And I don't think that is because the demons only prey on people who believe in them. I will happen to bet that is because they are the ones that do believe that things can be caused by demons. They are vulnerable because they believe this stuff. And what I want to put to you is, what methodology are you using to confirm these are demons? And how can we replicate that methodology? And this is important because this is what we do in science. How can we replicate that methodology so everybody, including these people who you're saying are doing the wrong thing, can use that methodology to accurately and precisely confirm when it is a demon and when it is a neurological disorder with problems? Because this is still happening. This last case happened last year. So something is broken here. What is your methodology?
All right. So the question that you're putting to me is, tell me how to do science on something that you say from the onset is not science. It's like me saying, tell me how to do religion on the thing that you call science, which you say specifically is not science. Like, for instance, let me ask you a question. Who is the god of science, the Pope of science right now? The great pontiff of science. You know, who gives you the sacred host of science every Saturday, or is it Friday? You know, where is your science Sabbaths held? And you say, wait a second, Justus, this is insanity. You're asking me to defend science in a religious framework, and I'm saying the exact same thing. Mark, this is insanity. You're asking me to go from one magisterium to the other and defend religion or defend the area of the supernatural in a scientific arena. And I'm saying I'm not really interested in doing that, simply because, again, we're talking about the supernatural. It's by definition beyond the natural. As far as my methodology is, again, as I said before, I deal my particular personal experience, my personal practice with helping people get rid of hauntings is mostly with house demons, and doesn't have to do with actual exorcisms. I had a very, very bad experience as a exorcist in training. It sounds terrible. When I was young, I was actually been translating for someone who was claiming that they were an exorcist. The things that I saw there told me that I needed to be very careful with the demonic world, because it's very real, very powerful, and needs to be treaded lightly with. So I deal mostly with house demons, and my methodology is I will ask, you know, there's a laundry list of questions that you ask about what is being happened. We have a CO2 meter, you have a methane meter. You look for, you know, is there a gas leak in the area? Do you have natural gas coming in? Is there a gas leak? Is there O2 levels are too high? You look for those things first. That's the thing that you do first. Second thing is that you ask about not circumstantial evidence, but things that will predispose people towards hauntings. Have your relatives or relatives that you know of who've lived in this house done black magic or had been involved in the occult? And more often than not, that will happen. And often times you said, like, you would like to know what percentage of people that I've helped are atheists. And frankly, Russia is a largely atheist country, despite what a lot of the misconceptions of the outside world is. And the majority of people that I've helped would actually claim no formal beliefs in God or the supernatural. And that's part of the horror and the problems that they have. They said, you know, grandma did witchcraft. We don't believe in it. It's just superstition. It's not real. But we have this thing that is terrorizing us, and we need help. And so this is, yes, absolutely. Lots of people who have come to us are atheists. Lots of people who did not believe in the supernatural or in demons before they had this phenomenological experience, which convinced them that there was something out there. So it is not always psychosomatic. It's not always about people who just want to believe or who believe from childhood. But on the other hand, it's about people, and again, it has a lot to do with the beliefs of the community. Again, because demonic powers gain power from the beliefs that we give them. So there is that is true. It does look a little bit like psychosomatics, but it's actually not. And so yeah, that's the situation.
Okay, so You asked me to tell you how science could do religion, basically. Yeah, if I basically make the God of Spinoza my God, I believe in it no matter what it says. I make Einstein the prophet. Whatever he says cannot be disputed. The Sabbath is held the festival of Einstein every first day of every month. This would be the religious adherence to traditions and great figures that would make it a religion, but that's not what we do in science. You're sort of saying methodology isn't something that you do because it's all science. No, you do methodology every day. There's a methodology to crossing the road. If you just go, well, I haven't seen some trucks for a while, I'm just going to cross the road. That's a terrible methodology for getting across the road. If you look left, look right, listen for any traffic, and then cross the road, that is a way better methodology for gathering evidence of any vehicles on the road. You don't seem to understand that methodology is applicable in every single day with almost everything we come up with for knowledge or belief. It is how you obtain the data about your world. And it's absolutely applicable outside of science. There is nothing intrinsic to science about a methodology. You're saying that, hey, these things look like psychosomatic problems. But they're not psychosomatic problems. And I'm asking, how do you differentiate between that? What methodology do you use for separating psychosomatic problems, mental health issues, superstitious beliefs? Because even if this person is an atheist, they will probably still have some superstitions. And you convince them it's demons. And then you say, well, I can get rid of these demons for you. Now, I've got no doubt that may work on some people, but is it ethical to do that? Is it ethical?
All right. This is so we've gone from give me a scientific proof to give me a methodology to give me your ethical defense. So we'll go through those. Okay. First thing, I never said that I don't believe in methodology or that I don't have a methodology. In fact, I actually gave you a brief Reader's Digest version of a methodology. So to say that I don't believe in methodologies is ridiculous on its face, since I just gave you a methodology. What I said is that there are two different magisteriums. There's science and there's religion. That science has to do with the physical world, religion has to do with the divine, with the spiritual world or the demonic, with non-spirit, the malevolent spiritual world. And these are different spheres with different sets of methodologies that are hermetically sealed from each other. They don't go back and forth. And so what I'm saying is, of course, it would be absurd for you to treat science like a religion. And you demonstrated that with your little thing about, it would be absurd. And it is also absurd to treat religion with science, like to try to dissect it scientifically, because they are dealing with different questions. They're dealing with different spheres. Science is the result of the scientific method, which is a delineated 5-step process that gives you certain conclusions that have predictive power in the physical realm. Religion is an entirely different kind of knowledge. So again, to keep saying, well, you don't believe in methodology. I absolutely do believe in methodology, just not scientific methodology as applies to religion. For instance, I believe in hermeneutics. I believe in exegesis. I believe in, to some degree, exorcism. And it is a methodology, but it's not a scientific methodology as applied to spiritual things. As far as the ethics of doing, the majority of the people that come to me for help are not members of my church, as I already said that, and I do nothing to convince them that they are demon possessed. In fact, I do my due diligence to show what natural phenomena could potentially, answer their need. And if they are convinced that, oh, wait a second, this is, we had a gas leak. Oh, wait a second, maybe we should get our sleeping patterns, which is a huge one with people who are having night horrors, is they're just sleep deprived. They're not getting enough sleep. Before the debate we were talking about some issues that some people are having with sleep. And that is a huge part of what I do, is just getting people back on a decent sleep pattern to get these things under control. But then when you've excluded those things, when you've gone down the list of the most common things that are potentially what could explain things physically, then you go down the laundry list of what things might explain this otherwise. And then if you find that evidence or those things that predispose people towards demonic possession, their houses, for instance, which is what I deal with, then you deal with it. And when having done those steps, dealing with the possession, and it liberates people from the oppression, people who are atheists, people who don't believe or didn't believe previously in hauntings, then is it ethical to do good or to do evil? I mean, if what you've done has given people peace and has given them, has freed them from an oppression that they've been suffering under, is that not ethical? If you're not violating any other ethical principles in the completion of it. Again, I'm not trying to convince people that they have demonic possession. I'm saying that if people have gone down the laundry list of things that could explain what they're going through, and they're still suffering, then I want them to know that there is a potential explanation, and there's relief. And I think that is ultimately ethical.
Okay, so what you've said conflicts from what you said earlier, because you sort of said that, hey, these are people that don't believe in demons, but you don't try and convince them. You actually have to convince them it's not demons, that you do the opposite of what I suggested. So you basically said, well, they don't believe in demons until they come to me, and then say, well, no, I had tried to convince them it's not demons. So that's a clear contradiction in what you've said. So they obviously come to you with a prior belief in demons. Now, running through the whole thing of common things, jump in. Then uncommon things. No, I won't. I'll finish my points. Thank you. Running through the list of common things and then uncommon things, and then you go to what else? What if it's something that is incredibly rare and say a neurological disorder, or it is? How do you address the idea of possession syndrome, the psychological distorted thought that you are possessed or your house is possessed or these things have spirits in it? Because that is in the DSM-5, and we know that is a dissociative disorder. I can't remember the exact dissociative disorder, but it is a dissociative disorder that has been classified in the DSM-5. So these people come thinking that there are demons because you try to convince them otherwise. That they're already in a vulnerable state where they're ready to believe this. And like, so if their grandma did witchcraft, as you'd said, or I don't even know what that is, but if they did something that they perceive as dark and evil, they may be primed in that superstition already. This isn't rocket science. We understand how the human mind works and why superstitions take root in people. We understand this. But what you haven't done is provide a single shred of reliable evidence for any of this. You have simply made claims that what you see is not psychosomatic, it is not mental illness, while coming from a place that it is in no way trained to make that distinction. What I'm saying is go to somebody who has training and experience in exactly this, mental health problems, these kind of problems. I mean, I don't think you've even given an account for what supernatural things that you have seen.
I'll give you a chance to respond, Justus. A short and pithy one if you can. And then I do want to go into, we do this new feature in which we ask the audience, we poll them and ask which topic they especially want to hear you guys discuss. And that's usually about 2 minutes for each of those topics that we run by you. But first, Justus, I'll give you a chance to respond to Mark.
Yeah, earlier on there, I was trying to interject, Mark, not so much as to interrupt as much as to just kind of delineate the points so that we could deal with each thing as it comes out. But the first thing that you said was that you contradict yourself in the sense that people who didn't believe in demons and they come to you and you try to and that kind of thing. And what I'm saying again is you have people, quite a few people in my experience who have run into phenomena that they have become to believe are supernatural, are demonic. These people, having had before the appearance of the phenomena, not believed in the supernatural. They were either agnostic or atheistic. Then they come to me and I say, well, let's make sure that this is not just a physical phenomenon. Let's go down this list. So I'm the one who's actually helping them go down and say, take a deep breath. There are things that could happen just physiologically, and doing that. So I am not saying, oh, you know what? Well, demons. I'm the one who's, my first step is to say, let's look at the thing that we know could possibly be answering this problem. So, and then after that, if I have a belief that these things are oppressive towards people, that people can become subject to them, then of course I'm going to look at that as a potential. You say you do nothing, but I've already said that I do things. I send people, for instance, if people are exhibiting what they believe are their relatives or whatever, evidence of demon possession, the first thing I'm going to do is send them to a psychiatrist to be evaluated, to get help, professional help, to the extent that is possible. Again, referring to the Rees-Howells method, which is get as much help as you can in the civil, quote unquote, scientific world until that has exhausted itself. At which point, then if the scientific world has no answers, then we go above and beyond that. I'm not a trained psychologist. I'm not a trained psychiatrist. Yep, go for it.
Some of these topics actually have to do with that, in particular, whether or not there are some cases in which it can't be explained by psychiatry. But before we get to those, the number one voted topic with 60% out of the 4 options on the poll was, is there any video or photo evidence of demons? Now, I know, Justus, you said that they're not material, so it makes sense. You're saying that you wouldn't have any direct video or photo evidence, but is there a way in which you could have video and photo evidence in which it's indirect? In other words, for example, if it looked like somebody's on camera and all of a sudden we just see like a red mark appear on their face in the shape of a hand, and we clearly saw nothing touch their face, and the video editing was just too hard to pull this off, you might say it was like, is that direct evidence? Any thoughts on this? Is there any way in which there can be, or is there any video or photo evidence you found compelling? We'll start with you, Justus, and then we'll give Mark a chance to respond as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. Again, I start out with this, is that the evidence for the demonic is going to come from what science calls anecdotal evidence, from firsthand sources, because the human being is the device that is meant to connect with the spiritual realm. So that would make sense that that's where we get the evidence from. Having said that, yes, demons do interact with the physical world to a degree, although they're not physical. They have some ability to interact with the physical world, and they may leave physical evidence. So I don't exclude video or sound evidence. That is possible. But it's highly, mostly what you will have is, if you have a haunted house, for instance, where the demon who's doing the haunting is
another 60
leaving
seconds,
audible evidence, which is the most
kind of a lightning
jump
round.
into real quick. Sure, sorry, I'm hard with lightning round. So yeah, the audible evidence, which is the most common, you will often have where recording devices are placed in the home, and you actually hear those sounds. So that is a kind of evidence that happens.
So stick that in your pipe and smoke it, Mark. All right, we'll give you a chance to respond. Mark, what do you think?
Well, anecdotal evidence and eyewitness accounts are notoriously unreliable, and anecdotal evidence is some of the worst evidence you can present in court. Physical evidence is way better. Obviously, he's saying, well, there won't be physical evidence to a certain degree, but if it interacts in the physical world, there will be physical evidence of some kind that we can sort of point to. I mean, even the Catholic Church, they say, oh, we witnessed levitation, and their idea of levitation is simply somebody bowing their back, so they're basically on their heels and their head. This is not levitation. This is not supernatural happenings. All of their supernatural happenings are explained by real world phenomenon that we're aware of. The schizophrenia, dissociative identity disorder, other neurological disorders and mental health disorders when you watch these videos, it explains it perfectly. And psychologists and psychiatrists have said as much. There is no reason to go to ghouls and goblins for these things that they say, oh, that's supernatural. No, they're not. They're perfectly natural. It's just that they don't have an explanation, so they insert demons as the cause. There is no reason to do that. There's no evidence for demons. There's no good evidence for ghosts. It doesn't exist. We need to snap out of this mindset.
We'll jump to this next topic, and folks, want to say we're going to have the Q&A in just a few minutes, so if you happen to have any questions, fire them in soon, as we're going to wrap up in about 30 minutes, actually probably slightly less than 30 minutes, so fire those questions in quick if you have any. And with that, this next subtopic that the audience voted second most, you could say, desired topic was, could ghosts pose as demons? So I think it's kind of an epistemic challenge in terms of granting there's some sort of supernatural, malevolent, or perhaps prankster, any sort of personal entity that's incorporeal. Could it actually be that these are actually ghosts, dead spirits of people that are pretending to be demonic? Justus.
Yeah. Again, I come at it from a biblical worldview. So for me, Scripture is the source. It seems to me that Scripture does not completely exclude the possibility of ghosts. That there is a possibility that they would, but it seems that it would be extremely rare in the biblical worldview. Most likely, it's demons posing as ghosts and not the other way around.
You got it. This one, that's what, Mark, I want to give you a chance if you want to respond to that, even if you're...
Oh, that's okay. I don't think ghosts are real either. I think that all of the, we don't have enough evidence to believe in ghosts or demons. There's nobody presenting anything that would be more conclusive than, say, the evidence for Bigfoot. There's no people coming with any solid evidence whatsoever. So I don't believe in either, and I don't really see why anybody should. Every time we get to actually investigating these things, we find explanations for them. It's not good enough in today's society that we run out of explanations and just insert the supernatural. I'm sorry, it's just not good enough.
You got it. This one, interesting. So granting this, I think there's maybe a way in which, a skeptic could say that even if it was the case, but granting this, they want to know, Justus, have you ever seen a possessed person with super strength? Because I think the argument is that if you did, and it's hypothetical, then it might be evidence of something supernatural. Like if a little girl picks up her bed over her head, that something off is happening. But we'll give you a chance, Justus, then we'll give you a chance, Mark.
Yeah, the my first experience with an exorcism of a person actually had that, where it was a very small, slight-framed person who had supernatural strength, and it was very much like the story from the Bible in the book of Acts, where the 7 sons of Cephas come and were trying to exorcise a man who then said, Peter I know, Paul I know, but who are you? And beat them thoroughly and chased them out of the house. And that was more or less what happened to me and my little group of people when I was young and interpreting for these people. They claimed to have power that they did not have. And it goes back to Mark's point about prayer and fasting. To be involved in the spiritual world and to have strength to exercise these spirits, one needs to have spiritual strength. And that comes from knowing the divine, having a relationship with God, and having prayer and fasting. So this is that was something that happened in my life. It was one of the most scary situations in my life, when you saw a small young person completely wasting a whole group of people and throwing around the room like a rag doll. And that was extremely formative, I guess, in my life.
You got it. Well, quick, kick it over to Mark as well.
Yeah, thank you, James. So a lot of these anecdotes, they come back not lining up with multiple stories. The house that I showed, the 200 Demons house, that came back with the mother saying that the boy showed supernatural strength in kicking somebody, and he flew across the room. The police actually reported something different, that the boy kicked somebody and they fell and stumbled, but it wasn't anything super strength-like. Now, I'm not claiming that adrenaline can't give you a massive amount of strength or increase the amount of strength that you have, but nobody's ever shown any actual evidence of these supernatural strength powers. In that same case, in that house, they reported that the boy ran up a wall. And in actual fact, what was reported by the authorities was that he was being held by somebody. He put his feet on the wall, ran a bit, and then flipped over. That's nothing that can't be done by a pretty agile young man. It's not that these stories come out, and it's human nature to make the fish you caught bigger, to exaggerate what has happened. And that happens a lot. You have to be careful with anecdotal evidence, because whoever's telling it will have a preconceived belief of what has happened. That's why we rely on empirical evidence instead of anecdotes. It's because this does happen.
You got it. And this last one, let's do it short and sweet, and then we got to go to the Q&A. This one is there evidence of any possessed people with clairvoyance? In other words, they know something that they should not have known. For example, if someone becomes possessed and they start speaking a language that they never knew, like especially an ancient language like Latin or something like that. Have you ever seen this, Justus?
I've never seen demon-possessed people demonstrate language that they have not possessed. I've not seen that personally, no. I've heard that it happens, but not that I've seen it.
Or any other type of clairvoyance. So maybe, you walked in the room and the possessed person said, Justus, and let's say you'd never met them before and there's no reasonable way, even no plausible, even remotely plausible way that they would know your wife's name. And they said, how is your wife so-and-so, and her birthday's on this date. Anything like that, anything in which they seem to know something where it's like, wait, how could you have known that?
Mm-hmm. I've seen again that kind of on the benevolent side of things, words of knowledge, people who knew things that were impossible to have been known from a in a prophetic sense, not a demon possessed sense.
Gotcha.
But that the demons do give people periodically the ability. Yeah, sure, that's scriptural.
You got it. And Mark, we'll give you a chance if you want to respond.
Yeah, so this claim's been made by a few people, especially the talking in Latin that sort of Annalise Mitchell, the German woman that I showed, I believe her. They sort of said she was talking in Latin when she wouldn't have known the language. It was sort of found by the court that she was actually repeating the Latin said to her back. So again, with this anecdotal evidence, you have to be really careful that somebody isn't taking what they want from the situation. These people that were performing the exorcism, they believed it so fervently that they kind of ignored these signs that pointed to when I say normal mental health issues, but just mental health issues. She was simply repeating the Latin back, but what the priest got out of that was that she suddenly knew Latin, which is demonstrably false.
You got it. And with that, we are going to jump into the Q&A. So I want to say thanks very much for all of your questions, folks. We're going to try to speed through these. We've got about 20 minutes. Big J says, hello, James. Thanks, Big J, for your super chat. And Utavara Utvara1 says, Walker, do you have any success in curse removal?
Yes, curse removal is something that we've done quite a bit. It goes along with house cleaning. And one of the curses that I helped remove was an impotency curse that the guy who broke up with his girlfriend was given, which is kind of hilarious. But in any case, yes, that is have had experience with that and have had success.
You got it. This one coming in from Psych Horror says, how can you possibly determine real demon hauntings from false ones? Are you prepared to believe everyone who says they've seen a demon? Why or why not?
Absolutely not prepared to believe everyone who says they've seen a demon or that they have a haunting. That's why you have a checklist. You go down things that could possibly explain the haunting, so as to not waste your time or get into the woo more than necessary. So yeah, absolutely. You don't believe everything, but when you see a situation where, again, this is why I referred to children who do not know that a cleaning has happened, and then the horror is gone. So the parents ask for help, and then the children report that they no longer have any night horrors. So again, you're looking at a cause and effect relationship, and not just at something other than that.
You got it. This one coming in from Totally Not a Demon says, to Justin, I think they mean Justus. So they say, are demons only subjugated by the Christian God? How do you know that we, I mean the demons, are not just playing along? Namely, okay, so they're saying, it's kind of like that epistemic challenge earlier. Could it be the case that demons are actually not under the subjugation of God, and that they actually could overpower God, but they're just playing, you could say almost like playing dead, they're playing weak?
Yeah, this challenge was actually given to Christ in his earthly ministry, that you cast out demons by the power of the Lord of demons, by Beelzebub. And he says that if Beelzebub is divided against himself, then his kingdom does not stand. But if I cast out demons by the power of God, by the finger of God, then the kingdom of heaven is upon you.
You got it. So come in.
The idea of faking. Yep, go for it.
No, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. Just the idea that the demons would be faking, like, we're going to fake to that God is the ministers of God, and God himself is powerful to chase us out. What does that gain? Like, you're just proving that your enemy is, more powerful than you are. What's the point here?
You got it, and thank you very much for this one. Coming in from Kwani Upstate says, if I donate $100 in exchange for James's soul, would that be proof that I am demonic?
No, it would be proof that you were feeble-minded.
Weird. Oh, this one, Bubblegum Gun says, Mark, what medical condition explains levitation?
Well, as I said, levitation, like the actual leaving of the ground, has not actually been observed. In the Catholic Church, when they do exorcisms and they describe levitation, it is simply the bowing of the back. The heels and the head are still on the floor. So you've got to be careful when you use the word levitation, because that has a different connotation in Catholic exorcisms than actually floating and leaving the floor, which has never been observed. So, yeah, I think we can safely say that a person can bow their back and leave their back from the floor. I can do that. You can probably do that. Certainly a person under an extreme amount of stress and duress could do that.
You got it. And I want to, folks, I got to say this. I have to say it. I'm so excited. As a quick side note, we are so close to booking the final debate for DebateCon. It's going to be our in-person conference on Saturday, November 19th. We're going to squeeze all of the debates into one day. It's going to be amazing. And we are so close. The last one, because I'm like, I want to announce it so bad I could taste it. It's going to be huge, you guys. I've got to tell you, there are going to be some on this card of debates that you're going to be like, oh my gosh, for real? Is that really happening? But want to say thanks very much for your question. Bubblegum Gun says, got that one. Sunflower says, Mark, the 2022 Nobel Prize was just awarded to physicists who proved, quote, the universe is not locally real, unquote. Yet here you are applying rigid, dry skepticism to the supernatural. Why not be more open-minded?
Well, I think having an open mind is great until your brain falls out. Like there's a million things you could insert into these demon-shaped gaps and sort of say, hey, that's the reason for them. You could insert alien rays coming down from the universe. You could insert magic gremlins that live on Pluto doing it. There's a million things you could just basically ascribe to these events. Why are we suddenly going, well, let's drop science in order to open our minds to the magic gremlins? Sunflower, it's not that I have a closed mind to it, but before I actually consider it a plausible explanation, you have got to provide some evidence of that plausibility, some reliable evidence. And so far, all we've got is anecdotes and religious beliefs. I'm really sorry, but that isn't good enough for me. And I don't know why it's good enough for anybody.
You got it. And someone said in the live chat, Pokerman says, where is the debate conference? It is, thanks for mentioning that. I forgot to mention, it's in Plano, Texas. So if you are anywhere near Dallas, if you're in Houston, Austin, I can say one of our guests is driving up from Austin, like hint, but it's going to be amazing. It's going to be in Dallas. And we're going to jump into the next question. This one coming in from, do appreciate it, Quani Upstate says, should a possessed person be found not guilty of murder if the demon controlled them and made them kill people, Justus?
I think that a situation with demons, demon possessed people killing people is, again, would be a very rare case. But the person, it would be a little bit like vehicular manslaughter under the influence of alcohol. Demons do not possess people without being invited. And so there might be mitigating circumstances if you could actually demonstrate in a court of law, which again, the whole natural problem is here, because the court of law is meant to cease out natural phenomena and evidence. But if you were to show, maybe there would be mitigating circumstances, just like for people who have psychological situations, psychological elements, but the person cannot be completely exonerated under a demonic possession, because they are, to some degree, responsible for having invited that demon to possess them.
This one coming in from
Can I just add something to that, James? Would you mind? Just quick, really pithy.
Yeah, go for it.
So demons made me do it has not been a viable defense in law forever. Ever since Salem witch trials, where they eliminated spectral evidence. The problem is there is no way to investigate whether this demon is actually real or not, and that is the problem. You cannot entertain it, regardless of whether the person invited it in or what have you. It's just something that we have no evidence for, so it's not even considered.
We'll give you a super short, pithy response if you want one, Justus. Otherwise, we're going to the next one.
I say that in general, the natural supernatural dichotomy, I have mostly agree with Mark, but again, I would never use the demon defense.
This one coming in from, do appreciate your question. Thunderstorm says, if science and atheism don't believe in anything, why do they have funerals and ceremonies? It feels hypocritical and like they are lying.
Yeah, good question. So I'll first address the first part. It's not like we don't believe in anything. Atheists and agnostics and people believe in things. I believe in lots of things. The only thing that an atheist has to do is not believe in a God to be an atheist. That's only one thing. I believe in loving people. I believe in a strong judicial system. There's a ton of things I believe, probably the same things as you. The reason why we have funerals is because of the people that are left behind. It's for us, not the dead person. You honor their memory and you go through a grieving process, and we understand grief and how it affects us. It's important to have these farewells to our loved ones. It's a part of that process in which we let them go and let their memories go. There's nothing supernatural about that. There's nothing religious about that. It is simply we have a lot of ceremonies. We have graduation ceremonies. We have ceremonies marking an achievement. They're important to us. So it's not for the person that's died. It's for us.
This one from Bugmaster says, I thought that hauntings were done by ghosts, not demons. I think they're saying, Justus, they heard you say that you deal with hauntings sometimes.
Yeah, the difference between hauntings and a haunting that's done by a ghost or a haunting that's done by a demon has to do with what you believe the entity to be, not the phenomena. The phenomena would be the same. What you believe in an entity would be different.
Chris G says, when you reference sleep horrors, are you meaning night terrors like the parasomnia, Justus?
Yes.
You got it. But I think they're saying that, like, doesn't that mean that there is a, okay, so are you maybe saying that, like, that sleep, that
there are some phenomena, there are some phenomena that can be explained by people having what's called, sleep horrors or night terrors, and where a person goes into a state of a nightmare, but they're not fully asleep. They're actually in a wakeful state.
Gotcha.
And that can be exceedingly distressing, but it is a natural phenomenon.
This one from Karma's Real says, Mark, which objective laws do you rely on for observing scientific claims? How can you account for them being objective versus subjective? What's the origin of these objective truths in the universe?
Okay, so basically the laws of nature are objective. They will continue to be so. If you're sort of getting to where does rationality come from and sort of burning down the chessboard by saying, hey, you can't demonstrate rationality, well, yeah, you've got to make some presuppositions about your own mind and the laws of logic that lead to rationality. But having said that, the laws of nature that we observe after that are objectively so. If a rock tumbles off of a mountain, that's objective to where it will go. It's not my subjective opinion. And that's the whole point. We can make models about this behavior, and the result will be objectively so. It doesn't matter which mind is viewing it. It will be the outcome of physics. So I'm not sure what you're getting at unless you're trying to basically question reason altogether. And if that's the case, then why did you bother reasoning that question to ask me?
You got it. This one coming in from the Overgiver says, is it possible for other religions to cast or cleanse out demons, Justus?
This is break up there a little bit.
They said, is it possible for other religions or people of other religious faiths to cast out demons as well?
That is an interesting topic. There seems to be that lower level demons, like hauntings and lower level possessions, not higher level possessions, but lower level possessions, that there is a hierarchy of demonic entities, that they're varying in strength and varying in ability to stay attached to the body which they wish to possess, being that a house or a person, and that those lower level demons actually can be pushed out by what you can call the spiritual strength of the practitioner, regardless of their particular religion. And again, this is non-scriptural, but it seems to be what is demonstrated phenomenologically.
You got it. This one coming in from, do appreciate your question. Franco Trujillo says, what type of evidence would it take to convince you that demons or ghosts aren't likely real? Love your content moderated debate. Thanks for your kind words, Franco. Give you a chance, Justus.
Evidence that demons aren't real, for me, it's again, I have evidence that demonstrates to me, both in my own life and in my practice, that they are real. And you would have to go down the laundry list of those, I don't know, all of those 24 or more exorcisms that I've done or cleanings that I've done, and show that each one of those was completely physiological. And since I do my due diligence and actually do exclude most of the things, it seems to me like you're asking me to what evidence that you could provide me to tell me that my experience was not what it is. And that's a high bar.
Bubblegum Gun says, Mark, stop running and debate me one-on-one on modern day debate. One of your
Well,
buddies.
you'd have to get a topic, Bubbles. But yeah, if you want to come on modern day debate and take me on a debate, I will debate you. But yeah, okay, sure.
Juicy.
Maybe we can have one over. Yeah, sure. I'll take on Bubbles. It's just Bubbles. Come on.
Chris G says, quote, the human being is the device that is meant to connect with the spiritual realm, unquote, saying this is what you said, Justus, and then says, why not the quote unquote upside down, like that TV show? Prove it.
I'm not aware of the cultural reference.
Stranger Things. They have, they have sort of like a mirror world to our real world that's sort of dark and emo and edgy kind of thing, I guess, is how I'd describe it.
Mr. Monster says, is it possible that angels and demons and ghosts are just perceived to be these things when they're actually aliens?
That is a possibility. I mean, I think that the opposite is most likely the truth, like that demons, the demonic, are what we are seeing when we're seeing alien encounters, again, because the alien encounters is not something new. It's something that's the kind of thing has been observed for millennia. The perceived, what you're seeing, changes, so it goes from chariots to flying machines, but the phenomena seems very has a lot of continuity through history.
You got
Can I just say something briefly to that? Yeah, sure. That's something that you can sort of, there's a million things you could put in there instead of aliens as well. You know, if we're making stuff up, let's go hog wild and say they're extra dimensional aliens from another dimension with, magical powers. You could anything, you could put literally anything in there. So yeah, sorry, James, go ahead.
No, that's all right. And this one coming in from, do appreciate your question. Alyosha says, good grief, Mark. Eyewitness accounts are now quote-unquote anecdotal evidence. Read Peter Fruchin's account of living with the Inuit. That's all they say.
Well, yeah. I mean, eyewitness accounts are the definition of anecdotal evidence. What? Yeah. And that's not to say that eyewitnesses' accounts aren't evidence. They're just not very strong evidence. Look, the police, they know that eyewitness accounts aren't that reliable. And in fact, when they do lineups, it is remarkable how often people get the details wrong, or when they're describing a crime, how often they get the details wrong. Our perceptions aren't that reliable when we retell them back. And I'm not dismissing it as, we can't rely on anybody's anecdotal evidence. All I'm saying is it's just not that strong in comparison with something like forensic evidence. DNA evidence, for instance, is incredibly strong. If you place DNA evidence at a crime scene, they've been there. If someone says, hey, I saw a guy and I think it was that guy, sorry, not that strong. I'm really sorry. You're going to have to deal with that.
This one from Buckmaster says,
just real quick, I'd like to jump in on that real quick if you could.
Short and
the problem is with the problem with the skeptic position that, anecdotal evidence isn't evidence, excludes anything that might only have eyewitness evidence as being that the only evidence might be eyewitness. And it seems to me somewhat, precious that they would exclude that. At the voice of 2 and 3 witnesses, that's the idea, that's the reason why you have collaborative eyewitness evidence. If 3, 5, 10, 20 people are all establishing the same fact, then maybe it has a higher chance of being correct than not. Like if everyone throughout the entire history of the human race said that they encountered these things, maybe it has
this one
more
from
validity than not.
Bugmaster.
Can I have the final word, because that question was for me? Yeah. So, and I didn't say anecdotal evidence isn't evidence. I said it was evidence, just not strong evidence. You said 2 or 3 witnesses. Great. I can find 2 or 3 witnesses for Bigfoot. I can find 2 or 3 witnesses for aliens. I can find a ton of people that believe in aliens. And you say the entire history of mankind eyewitnessed these things. No, they didn't. You have already acknowledged that they eyewitnessed a whole lot of mental health problems, a whole lot of illness, a whole lot of other things, and what you claim to be this thing. So let's get that straight.
This one from Bugmaster says, I'm still confused. Do anti-demonic procedures also work on ghosts? What about aliens or the FAE? Isn't it important to figure out the correct species of foe before invoking the cleansing ritual?
The situation with ghosts and aliens, as opposed to demons and ghosts and aliens, whatever, is, again, it's your framework that you're working out of in interpreting the phenomena. You see a phenomena in a house, like people hearing noises. That's a very common one. Hearing or doors opening and closing. That's a very common one.
You got it.
Latches being unlocked is a common one. And, you can ascribe that to ghosts. You can ascribe that to aliens. I ascribe it to demons. And when I do, and then proceed with the proper procedure, then, people are relieved of the oppression. And so, again, it has predictive power.
You got it. Thank you very much for this question coming in from Alyosha Strikes Again. Says, Mark, I love you, but your objections in the face of evidence on this issue are purely dogmatic. And then said, important to remember, quote unquote, demons or contact with spiritual forces is a well-documented worldwide historical phenomenon.
So is aliens. That's a well-documented historical phenomenon as well. So is Bigfoot. It's not dogmatic. It's simply having a skepticism about things that are not demonstrably true. Justus mentions flipping latches and doing this kind of stuff. Wouldn't that be direct evidence or indirect evidence of these things happening? But no one is coming with any actual documented and investigated things like this. It's just, hey, these things happened in our house and we're just going to say them. There should be some way to see, if you set up a camera next to these latches, whether they are flipping by themselves, right? Right. But it's never done. Why isn't it ever done? Why does nobody capture these things? It's because all they're relying on is anecdotes, and that isn't good enough. As I said, throughout history, people have believed in aliens. Throughout history, people have believed in all kinds of things.
I've got to actually, I do have to wrap us up because I actually do have to run. I do want to give Mark the last word on that one too, just because it was originally addressed for him. But I want to say, my dear friends, both of our guests are linked in the description. So if you're like, wait, I want to hear just a little bit more, you certainly can by clicking on those links down below. We do appreciate our guests. They're linked right now. If you're watching live or watching afterwards, you can click on those links, including if you are listening via the podcast, as all of our Modern Day Debates end up on the Modern Day Debate podcast as well, available on fine podcast apps everywhere. You don't want to miss it. I'm not able to do a post-credits scene tonight, so I do want to say, folks, just a quick summary. We appreciate our guests, so a huge thank you to Justus and to Mark. It's been a true pleasure to have you guys here tonight.
Thank you, James. Pleasure to be here. And thanks, Justus, for coming and debating this. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Mark.
Alyosha snuck in a last question. This is the last one we can do. They said, Mark, we have not had documented accounts of Bigfoot and aliens for thousands of years.
Yeah, but it doesn't really matter. The fact that people were a lot more religious in the past, so they naturally would have inserted the explanations of demons rather than aliens, which became more popular in the current century, doesn't lend anything to its credibility. I'm sorry.
You got it. With that, do check out our guest links. We do appreciate them. And folks, if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button as we have many more juicy debates to come. You don't want to miss them, and keep your eyes peeled. We're going to be announcing any day now. We're going to be announcing the debates for our huge in-person conference in Dallas, Texas. It's going to be amazing. So keep an eye out for that as well, and we'll be posting it shortly. One last thank you, Justus and Mark. It's been a true pleasure to have you.
Thank you.